Alright, so I uploaded this video because I recently watched a video on YouTube on the channel for Jester Gaming. It's Jester, Jester.GAMING. And this YouTube video popped up in my feed. And I thought it was a pretty good tutorial on a suggested way to make an industry zone. And I thought it was pretty cool. He basically put the sources of material that he wanted to produce at one end, and basically traffic kind of drove around until it came to production facilities. And then thirdly, it went to either a warehouse or a cargo location for a train to take the supplies away, or for trucks to drive out and head straight out to the highway. And I kind of I thought it was a pretty good suggestion, so I thought I'd try it, in addition to some of the things I've tried in my own game. And after a while, basically I started to have a lot of traffic, and I mean an awful lot of traffic. And I think kind of what a lot of players are missing is with these simulations, you got to kind of make the streets exactly the way they would be in your own town. And some of the main bigger contributions to traffic, if you think about how streets work, that the biggest amount of traffic comes from cars, a high volume of cars trying to go from point A to point B. And the traffic is created because so many cars are traveling a long distance to get to where they're going, and because there's such a high volume, it creates a lot of traffic. And the other things that create traffic is buildings that have traffic that come in and out on a regular basis really shouldn't be pointed towards main drags, because the issue is when trucks need to go into those buildings, they tend to block traffic, just like they do in real life. If you put a small industry on the main street, if a truck comes to do a delivery, when he's bagging in, he's blocking the street. It's the same thing that happens in the game. And so usually those buildings are better on side streets. Now, in real life, obviously, some side streets are very difficult for a very large truck to navigate. But but these kind of buildings don't need to be on your main drags that's going to carry a very high volume of traffic. So those usually are the things that cause some of the biggest traffics in the industrial zone. And I was trying to iron out dealing with the issue. So the idea I come up with was very similar to his, except I put everything in a much tighter space. So my sources are at the beginning like his for the flow of traffic. And then the production facilities are right nearby. So the trucks leaving those sources where I'm drawing the materials from don't have to drive far to reach their destination. And because they don't have to drive far, then they don't get involved in traffic that does have to drive far. They'll be out of traffic and they create less traffic. I also put those sources and a lot of other buildings away from main drags because, again, when trucks go in and out of those locations, they block traffic. So adding lanes was something I tried at first, but that doesn't necessarily solve the problem. The idea is to get rid of the traffic as much as that I can. So those buildings I put on side streets. So you'll kind of see in my video how I kind of set that up. The same idea. And for the streets that are very, very long, it's mostly just to kind of send traffic in another direction to kind of get them to go where I want them to go and not where they think they should go. So here, let's take a quick peek. So you can see I'm starting to draw my streets. So what I chose is a T-junction. And the T works great for me because I can put the source for material at the top. And then I can put production facilities right underneath. So the idea is the trucks will drive out from, in this case, my forest, and take the wood that's necessary right to the processing plants, which are right across the street. And then that truck traffic tends to just follow the road right back around and go back to where they picked up the trees. And then the vehicles that lead the production facilities are obviously vehicles that are going to go and either take material to storage, or they're going to go down to another facility, which could be a factory, or is going to a cargo bay. But here I'm kind of evenly spreading my different teas. And I'm sorry I didn't do any time lapse or any editing. You feel free to fast forward if you want to. But I wanted you to see every detail. So what I noticed when you do it this way is, of course, you have less traffic. And because there's less traffic, this area actually grows very fast. So basically what I do is let the first part of this go until I get 3 stars. Then after I get 3 stars, I basically copy the road pattern and paste it to the other side. And I do this once I get all of my buildings in place that I want here from the beginning usually. And basically, without doing much work, you can get up to 4 stars in less than an hour. Now, the fastest I've done it is like 30 minutes. But that was really pushing it. That was building a lot of sources for material, trying to make the area grow really, really fast. Because at the time I needed a bunch of jobs, and so I was trying to fill that job need right away. In this case, I don't need to do that. I actually don't have a strong demand for industry, so this doesn't have to actually grow pretty fast at all. But it does, and I actually was able to get this to 4 stars in about an hour. As you see, I have some larger spaces underneath the T, and this is where some of the larger buildings will go. And you can actually use this design with all of the major industries. So you can do it with your forest, you can do it with your farms, you can do it with your fruit, you can do it with your oil, you can do it with your ore. It works with all of them. And again, the idea is to create as less traffic flow as you possibly can. And just like was suggested by Jester, you definitely want to have your industry zone near a highway. But some of the mistakes I've seen people also make is putting a residential zone nearby, thinking that the people who live in that residential zone will basically come over here and work in this area. And that's true, they will do that. But the problem is car traffic creates even more traffic when these people are either going home or they're driving to the factories. They actually create more traffic, even with and especially with the streets being shorter, you want to have the least amount of traffic as possible. The only cars you really want to be driving around here is basically police cars. You don't want to be any other traffic. Now I do later on, once the industry gets up to like 4 stars, 5 stars, I will put little industries inside, but I only need a few. These are the side buildings that will also kind of get some of your material. They'll make money for their own business, and I just put a sparing amount of those, because the less of those I have, the less traffic that I'll end up having in the long run. One of the things is you don't want to have too many long drags in your industry zone. Long drags basically seem to invite cars. The longer the streets, the more traffic tends to be. Even if you add more lanes, it really doesn't do any good. When trucks pull into a building, they basically take up the first lane. Even though some cars can go around, some cars create traffic because they're trying to cut over at the last minute, just like they do in real life. The idea is to eliminate it. I put those buildings basically on their own side street, and the main drags usually just lead to the expressway. Buildings where your produce is going to be leaving the industry zone and going out to your city, those should be closest to the highway as you can get them. The buildings I usually put very near to the highway would be any of my production facilities, the large ones like the large unique factories, or some of my storage lots. I put those closer to be near the expressway. So the fact is, when those trucks leave out, they just go right out to the highway. If they don't need to go out to the highway, they can always just use the clover leaves and come back around. And again, this kind of stretches out the traffic so that everything's not balled up all at one time. And what I've seen is you get a very nice, consistent flow. And even though you may have a very large industry zone, you won't have a lot of traffic. You'll see I'll be on 4 and 5 stars, and I'll still have roughly about the same amount of traffic I had when I first started. One of the things I noticed with the industries is that the biggest things that create the biggest traffic are the buildings where the material needs to come out. These are where most of your trucks are going to come from. So just remember, the more of those you build, the more trucks you end up having on the highway. So my rule is not to build too many. I was greedy at first, trying to make a whole bunch of money, and I would build a whole bunch of those sources, but it's just unnecessary. And it just creates more traffic, and then after a while, nobody's buying as much material as you're producing. So you should have just enough to create a profit where you're making a nice amount of money, where the industry zone can pay for itself, and you can make some profit on top of it. For my forest, many times I'm making, I guess at the most, roughly $17,000 this time in profit. But it's hit or miss. Some months is very high, some months is very low. So one of the tricks that I saw just to do that I've done as well is for the forest, before you put down your sources, you should build a few trees, basically the same trees that are also in these pre-manufactured sources. And then you plop your source on top of it, and it actually provides more trees for the trucks to pick up. It's a very nice trick. I was doing that from the very beginning because I saw that in another video. And I also noticed that in my gameplay, that when I plot one of these by themselves, I get one number, and then when I put them on top of other trees that were nearby, I got it to another number. You need these trees. They actually help out in preventing your sources from basically running out of material. Now you see I'm building sawmills. And again, basically the trucks are going to leave right out of the forest, go right to the sawmill. And then I also put a place in the store logs right across the street. So basically, if when the truck leaves the forest, if he goes to the sawmill and it's full, or he can't drop off materials, then he can just drop off right across the street. And then when the sawmill needs more material, basically you can just send a truck across the street. That truck will just loop back around and come and drop off the material. And again, the idea is to keep that traffic that needs to come in and out on a regular basis from joining on to your regular traffic that's going down the other streets. Having a highway nearby is key, and having the distance that your trucks need to drive to the highway be as short as you could possibly make them, but the trucks could be long gone. The sooner the trucks can leave the area, the sooner other trucks can come in and not create traffic. So you want it to kind of have an even flow where as quickly as trucks are leaving, other trucks are still coming in, and they can still just move because the other trucks aren't in the way. Like Jester suggested, you definitely want to have an interchange nearby, interchange to take your traffic away from the industry area, and then take them back to the main road that's going to take them back into the city. roads is definitely a very good way to help with traffic flow. One-way streets, two-way traffic creates more issues at intersections versus streets that only have one direction of flow. And if you have streets that have one direction of flow meeting up at an intersection, in most cases, at least in this game, they'll just drive through. But if push comes to shove, you can always put up some stop signs, and just have certain traffic stop, maybe from the smaller streets. Just remember, if your main street has a lot of heavy traffic, that's going to create traffic on your side streets because people have to sit stop sign for a very, very long time because there's a whole lot of vehicles that are coming down. So you kind of got to see how your industry zone is working before you decide what kind of signals you're going to need to put at your corner. At the beginning, I really don't put any, because with this layout, they just don't serve any purpose. Another thing that I do is my road that's actually coming into the industry, I put that at the farthest end of the map, of the layout. And one of the reasons why I do this is so the traffic that's coming in is not bothered by the traffic that's actually going out. And when I put it all the way at the end, it forces vehicles that come in to the streets that they need to go to and be able to turn very quickly to get to another street that they need to go to, so they don't have to drive around the whole layout. Again, when your industry zone gets really, really busy, there's going to be a lot of trucks that are going to be coming in because there's going to be a lot of trucks that's going to be going out. And how fast those trucks come back kind of depends on how your main city is laid out. In my case, I chose not to use a highway that goes in both directions around my city. I have one highway that loops around the outside and it basically goes all the way around the city. And I only have 4 entrances, well, 2 exits and 2 entrances up to the main highway. And for me, this makes it easy to connect up the highway to my industry zone, which isn't very far away. And again, having things close by makes it easy for you to build public transportation to get to those locations. And people who do drive their cars can drive, and they won't have to go very, very far, especially those who have to come to work. Alright, so I'm gonna put a little terrible loop here on the end, but I'll fix it a little bit later. So I was an avid SimCity fan for many, many years, and then I tried Cities XL for a little while, but that didn't really quite cut it for me. City Skylines, I only recently started playing, though I know the game is fairly old. I did see when it first came out, but I had trouble with it at the beginning. I got kind of discouraged with trying to load some third-party maps, and the game would crash all the time, so I kind of gave up on it. But I recently come back to it, and have a lot of mods, obviously. But I do play vanilla games as well. Like SimCity, the hardest thing is to make money. But I kind of use some of my SimCity strategies here, and they work fairly well. And this is one of the strategies I use in SimCity, because traffic is a monster in these simulation games. You know, it seems like no matter what you do, there's always a lot of traffic. And one of the ways to get rid of traffic, again, is to shorten up the distance people need to drive. Alright, so here I'm going to kind of pan over my main city a little bit. You can kind of see my highway just kind of wraps all the way around as a single loop. It creates a lot of less traffic. I can create the ramps where I want them to be if I want to use them. One of the things I learned is not to create too many ramps because it just creates more traffic. So I basically just made a cross and all of my traffic just kind of comes in and out on one of those. And it has definitely helped keep the traffic down. As you see, I already have some activity. There are some trucks kind of leaving, coming in and out. And it looks very sparingly now, but it does pick up after a while. Alright, so now let's see how we're doing. Yes, we kind of see the numbers are adding up really quickly. We'll be at the next level fairly fast. And this happens for the first 4 levels very quickly. You can reach the first 4 levels in about 30 minutes or so. The last level takes the longest. One of the ways to get to the last level quicker is basically doing what I stated earlier, is to copy this layout from this side with your buildings and then paste it to the other side, get everything hooked up to electrical and plumbing, and that'll help you grow fairly fast. In about 1 hour you can be at level 5. only so good, I guess. And I'm just going to add just a couple of different sources for the trees. And also another sawmill of a different type. Right now I'm just going to start with one. Later on I'll put a second one right next to it. But then after a while you start to get little messages saying that no one's buying your material. And usually the issue with that is there's a whole bunch of material at your storage lots, and at that point you can change the settings on those storage lots to empty. And this will start to sell your material, and of course in a month's time you can sell a lot of material if your lots are full, and that increases your profits for that month. Then you can spend another month filling up the lots again, and then the next month after you can empty them again. And this will, again, every other month you can increase how much money you're getting from your industry zone. Once your city gets really, really busy though, you probably won't be able to monitor your industry zones that often. And then at that point you can just kind of balance everything out and just kind of set it and forget it, and you can move on to growing your city. You can just come back and check once in a while just to see you're still making good money from your. One thing I like about this design is you don't have to build a large zone like this. You can just take one T and you can build that a little bit closer to your city. And the good thing about it is you can have this like right around the edge, like some major cities are. You have your main city in the middle with your downtown, and then you have your residents that live around the downtown area. But as you spread out, you come to these little industry pockets that are like outside the edge of the main city. And those is where you can put these little T-junctions. You can just put one. Just have a set of sources, some factories, and then just a couple of lots to put stuff on, and that's it. And you can have a lot of those very, very close to your city, just like you would have in real life. You have little pockets where there's little small industries. You can have them a little bit closer to your city, and when people who don't have to drive very, very far can get to work a whole lot quicker, which of course means you'll have a whole lot less traffic. Alright, so it took a little bit longer than usual. So about a little more than about 45 minutes in, we were just getting to level 3. So one of the reasons why it took a little bit longer than it normally would is because I haven't copied and pasted the layout to the other side. And I usually, like I said, I usually do this right at the beginning when I set my first few buildings down to kind of get things going really, really fast. But since I didn't have a high demand for industries right now, I didn't want to kind of do that right here at the beginning so quickly. But now I'm at the point where I'm going to do that. So now that I'm at level 3, I'm starting to upgrade the roads a bit. The little 2-lane roads after a while won't really be enough. The idea is, of course, is traffic that needs to turn to the next intersection won't be in the way of cars that need to just go by and go to the next street and just keep going. So I'm just increasing the roads because I'm going to be dropping more buildings, and it's actually going to get a little bit more busier. And so I just want the roads to be able to handle more traffic. 2-lane roads again just won't cut it after a while, especially when you get up to level 4. Alright, so now at this point, I'm starting to add some unique factories that I actually have material for. Again, I try to keep these away from main drags where traffic is going to be going very, very often. But it is very good to have these very, very close to where your production facilities are. Because they can basically, the trucks will just basically drive right down the street. They'll bring the material to these little production buildings, and then they can just turn around and go right back up. And again, they won't get involved too much with your traffic that's going to be moving around quite often. And I'm actually going to move these and put them closer to the warehouse or storage lot. other side as you have on the one side. But I just try to line everything up almost just like it is on the other side. So again, just remember some of these tips. Number one, the buildings that have trucks that come in and out quite a bit, don't have those facing main drags where the trucks that come in and out be blocking the traffic and causing delays in the car's movement. Number two, try to make sure that your production buildings are very, very close to where the sources are, so that the traffic needs to go in between both of them, will only go in between both of them, and it doesn't have to interfere with your other traffic that needs to move around on a more regular basis. And the traffic that's going to be moving the most is the traffic that's picking up items from your either production facilities or your lots, and then taking them out of your zone and taking them out to the city. Now that I have my copy in place, so the connecting roads to the highway, may have to change some roads around a little bit. As you can see, I put the in traffic as the first road here, because now my entry road is not at the far end, it's at the front. But it'll work exactly the same way. I could have easily pushed it to the other side, but as you'll see, it won't be necessary. Even though it'll be busy, there won't be any traffic jams. Alright, so we kind of had these as two separate forest industries, but I'm going to now combine them into one. Alright, so a few of the things I normally do a little bit earlier, I took a little time and did it a little bit later. It definitely makes a difference, but we're coming up on reaching our level 4 at this point. And so here we are. And so we've got some more buildings. Some of the things that I don't do, because of the layout size that I chose, I don't necessarily switch to any of the larger sources. They're really unnecessary. But if you do want to add larger sources, what you can do is for your trees at the top, I just basically destroy a couple of the lots, and I take one of my roads and draw it up, and that way I can still kind of put a source up there at the top, a larger one that kind of sticks out the long way. And that's if you want to use bigger ones, but they're just totally unnecessary. If you put down the small ones and you just put some trees around with it, it'll be more than enough material where you don't need to build any other bigger options. But I do put a few, in this case for the forest, I put a few little vineyards down, just so what they call the saplings, the baby trees. And of course the baby trees are used to be planted in one place, and then they're moved into the forest where they can finish growing, and that process just kind of goes around and around and around. But as you can see, I'm producing enough material where I'm importing very, very little. Like I say, if you watch your storage lots, if you fill them up first and then empty them, that'll help you kind of keep everything kind of balanced out. But if you watch the streets, you can see that even though my industry area is fairly large and has a lot of buildings, that you don't see a whole bunch of traffic. And good to check on the traffic. In this industry zone, I don't need any lane mathematics because it's just unnecessary. I don't have any traffic lights. I'm not using any stop signs. I'm just letting traffic just flow normal. There isn't a point where it gets heavy enough where any of that is necessary. There's enough long drags to where you can stretch traffic out. There's enough cross streets. The buildings are kind of put away from some intersections in some cases. So again, the trucks have a little bit of distance to drive to get to a main drag that kind of helps other traffic kind of keep going. Because you won't have so much traffic coming out into your main drag so quickly. Alright, at this point, I'm going to set this industry area to basically set it and forget it. I've built all the buildings I'm basically going to build. At this point, this is usually the time where I would start to add just a few commercial zones and some industry zones, and then I district them out and make them specific to businesses that'll basically be businesses that have to do with the industry itself. And that's pretty much it. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm not going to do very, very many of these. I'm not trying to make a channel. I'm not trying to make any money. I just saw a video that I thought had some really, really cool tips. Like I say, I kind of ran into a problem with it once I was trying to kind of build a very large industry zone. I started to have a lot of traffic, and most of that traffic basically came from the fact that you have very long streets to take traffic from point A to point B, and the longer the drag, the more cars, the more trucks will end up being on that drag. And if you keep it small, you don't put too many sources of material, the idea that jester.GAMING gave would work very, very well. But if you want something very, very large, because you want to kind of put it close to your city, like you see I have it in my case, they should follow this routine so it kind of keeps the traffic away, and you don't have to put residentials or commercials in the zone with your industries, because people in your main city won't have to drive very, very far. And that's basically it. I hope you enjoyed the video. But I especially made this video for jester.GAMING so he can just kind of see my idea that I kind of explained in the comment section. And he said he would like to see this idea and see how it works. And so here you go. I hope you enjoy it. Sorry it's a little long, but like I said, you can kind of skip through it and kind of see the parts you want to see and kind of see where I'm putting things. And like I say, this works for every single type of industry. The farming is a little bit more difficult, but what I do is, if you look at this layout here for the forestry, I basically have the fruits and everything goes with it on one side, and I duplicate the roads to the other side, and that's where I put the livestock. So the livestock's on one side, the farming with the fields is on the other side, and the two won't interfere with each other, and they only meet up on the main highway to leave, and it works the same way. You won't have a whole lot of traffic because you won't get an intermingling of traffic. And with the farms, you got to make sure you don't have the barns or those little storage silos, don't have those facing main drags, because those have trucks that go in and out on a regular basis. Those should be put on side streets, so it makes that traffic kind of leave the main roads, and that kind of helps keep the traffic down in your farming area. And my farming area ends up looking basically just like this: a whole lot of sources for material, a whole lot of factories, but not a whole lot of traffic. And with that, I'm going to close out. You can just watch the last few minutes. I'm just basically just doing some editing. Nothing major, just kind of fixing some problems. And of course, getting the trains over. We can start shipping stuff out. And as you can see, I kind of put the industry near water. So of course the next phase is we'll have another cargo bay for the ships that also take stuff. Alrighty, well I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be watching your videos very, very closely. And if I see anything else I can give you some suggestions on, feel free to use them. I'm not looking for anything, just you're welcome to cut and edit and use if you want to. But hopefully this kind of works out for you. Alright, so here we are with my little area a little bit more complete. You can see it a little bit better. As you can see, I'm all the way up to, I'm still on 4 stars, and you can see it's quite busy. But as you can see, I don't have a lot of traffic. Traffic is still moving pretty good. And that's why I use this layout, because I like to kind of like not have to watch it on a regular basis. But as you can see, I don't have a lot of traffic, even though I have quite a few buildings and there's lots of trucks moving around. Nobody's really getting in the way of anybody else, and traffic is moving fairly fast. And quickly I'm gonna have a little piece of video here with 4 of the industries kind of side by side, and you'll see them right next to each other, and you'll see that they're laid out essentially exactly the same. And you'll see that even though they're fairly large, like about this size, I don't have a lot of traffic. So hold on just 1 second. Alright, so here we are kind of showing you 4 of the industry zones. I kind of laid them out side by side so you can just kind of see them. As you can see, I have a relatively high volume of traffic of vehicles moving around, but you'll see there's not very many spots where cars are getting backed up. And I usually don't lay out my industries like this. I usually don't have them side by side like this, but I kind of just did this so you can just kind of see them together. See, it works pretty well. But if you are going to do them side by side like this, it's best for each industry zone to have its own direct highway that takes it back to the main highway that goes back to your city. It's just ways so when the vehicles leave each zone, they kind of have their own highway to go back to the main highway to get back to the city, and that kind of worked out very well for me. But I just kind of wanted you to see them side by side so you can just kind of get an idea. And that's gonna do it. I just hope you enjoy what you saw. Hopefully it can work out for you or anybody else who decides to see it. And continue to enjoy the game, and I'll continue to watch your videos.